We're on.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome
Woo-hoo.
back to HoopsHD's weekly HoopsHD Report. I am your host, Chad Sherwood, joined by a full cast here. Off to this side, David Griggs. Over there, we got John Stalika. Down below me, Joby Fortson and John Teitel. Good evening, gentlemen and puppet. And this is our HoopsHD Report, as I mentioned, where we go through all the major conferences, also discuss some news and notes regarding college basketball. And I want to get right into the biggest news that came out today, of course.
Yes, Tim Miles, here we go.
Now I'm muting David, and we're going to go over to our ACC guy, Joby, here. Coach K has to have back surgery. Again, he had it back about 20 years ago, 22 years ago.
95,
Yeah, has to have another back surgery, and is going to be out for a good portion of the season going forward.
Well, he won't be gone for the whole year by all indications, so this isn't a case where a lot of cynics said, oh, it's K's worst team, and he hands it over to Pete Gaudette and misses the year with back surgery. This is obviously an extremely talented team, though they did stub their toe this past weekend. Hey, let's all hope that physically K is okay. I don't have a bad back, but those who do know the pain, that it's a lingering pain that never goes away. How will this affect Duke? Well, with a freshman team, it could have a huge impact because with Allen and then, with Grayson Allen indefinitely suspended, there are a lot of things I read today. There have been 4 or 5 things that each one of them would be a huge story that would change the trajectory of Duke's season. And this is just yet another. It's remarkable it's happened. We'll see if they keep it together, but they definitely have the talent, even without Allen, to be able to do it.
And John T., without Allen, who I guess now we've got this question of who he's going to make the call out when he returns. Is it going to be Coach K still? Will it be Jeff Capel? But Duke come off of a loss against Virginia Tech on top of that this past week. Do you think this is a serious cause for concern? Do you think we could be going from a Duke's team that was looking like a 1 seed down to a Duke team that's looking at like a 8 or a 9 seed type?
No way.
Okay.
Unless Pete Gaudette reappears on the sideline somehow. No, it was a bad loss to the Hokies, although the Hokies are now looking like a top 25 team. It couldn't have come at a better time schedule-wise. They only have 2 outside the top 100 opponents left on their entire schedule until Syracuse keeps dropping. But right now it's their next 2 games at home, Georgia Tech on Wednesday, BC on Saturday. So you could not pick a better time in terms of that. As for the road trip, Florida State and Louisville next week, good luck. Grayson Allen could make the difference in that, but couldn't come at a better time, and I don't think it's going to cause them to drop like 8 seeds.
Well, I'll tell you what I want to do here is pull up the ACC actually on my screen, and it should be coming up any second now. We should be seeing the ACC standings. This is something we've used in the past, the under the radar. Going to start using it in the Hoops HD report, at least give it a shot here this week. As you can see, we've got the up to the minute standings here, including columns such as RPI. BPI is not yet out. That's an ESPN number. We should be getting that by next week. Our current KenPom ratings, Sagarin ratings, strength of schedule. And way down here, AP and coaches poll numbers as well. As you mentioned on Virginia Tech, looking like a top 25 team. They are a top 25 team, 21 in the AP, 23 in the coaches poll this week. Let's take a look at a few other teams beyond Duke. And David, let me bring you in here. Probably the most shocking result in the ACC this past week is what happened to North Carolina.
I'm not going to go so far to say that I was expecting Duke to lose that way at Virginia Tech, but Virginia Tech is good. Duke had not played a true road game yet, so it wasn't complete. It didn't completely bowl me over. What did is to see a team that had a much harder time sweating out NCAA than they did North Carolina. That was just astounding to me because this is, in my opinion, a pretty bad Georgia Tech team. And they didn't just beat Carolina. They kind of ran away from them at the end there.
Yeah, I mean, that game completely floored me. I know people made a big deal about Duke and Carolina both losing on the same day. I'm with you on the Duke loss. I think this Virginia Tech team is a real good team, and I think this is the type of game that I'm not shocked Duke lost it. This North Carolina win, Joby, it's completely inexplicable to me.
God, it's what in order to get a bunch of teams in the tournament, you need to have a bunch of teams that lose a lot. I suspected Georgia Tech to fulfill their promise and lose a lot in the conference. They failed. They failed the ACC there by actually beating a tournament-level team. But yes, it's a big surprise. The team, though, to watch, and I think segue is what happened in Charlottesville. That was not an upset. What happened in Charlottesville? Florida State is for real. You look at what they've done this year. Segue. Florida State is deserving of that number one on the screen.
Well, that was the other big upset. I guess we won't call it an upset. The other big loss that we saw, and Sleeka, let me bring in here. Virginia losing,
of course,
losing to Florida State, who's sitting here at 14-1 overall, and now top number 12 in the AP poll, 13 in the coaches poll.
Funny thing was, I thought you were buttering me up for Boston College and Syracuse. But at the same time, I think we really have to give Florida State some credit here because they also had a close one with Wake Forest earlier before they blew that game open late. And Florida State, I mean, just outside of an inexplicable loss against Temple, they've certainly looked like a protected seed this year.
Yeah,
and that was – I was just going to say, and that came at a time when Temple decided to play good for a week. I mean, I think we're 8-9 weeks into the season. Temple played good for one of them.
And let's talk a little bit about this Louisville team as well. They had a heck of a week coming off of the Kentucky game. They then go and lose to Virginia and then go and beat Indiana in a non-conference game. And David, let me stick with you for a second here. Is this just a matter of that, especially that Virginia game, that how awful they look, just too many tough games in a row for them, you think?
No, I think it's a matter of playing Virginia. Okay. Louisville has never played well against Virginia. And honestly, as pitiful as their offense was, it was less pitiful than it's been the last couple of years against Virginia. I just think that X's and O's wise, it's a really bad matchup for them. Louisville could go as far as they can in the tournament so long as they don't have to play Virginia again.
Pitino called Virginia his kryptonite in his post-conference press conference, and I think the numbers bear that out when you look out.
Yeah.
Well, if you look at a few of these other teams here as well, another was a great game, and maybe it shouldn't have been. Titel, Notre Dame needed overtime to take care of a Pittsburgh team that I don't think anybody thinks is that good, or maybe they are.
They're not. It's a two-man show with Artis and Young as their two leading scorers, and everybody else is way, way, way down the list. Notre Dame is good enough that they should not have Pitt take them to overtime. Obviously, a win's a win, and I don't think it's a bad win because Pitt is a solid opponent. But, yeah, I was surprised that a team of that caliber sunk to the level of a team of that caliber.
Well, let me throw a question out to each of you here. We've got a 15-team ACC, obviously. If you look at some of these numbers, you look like the Ken Pom column, you've got 4 top 10 teams, the Sagarins as well, 4 top 10 teams. You look at this also, you've got, in terms of RPI right now, 12 out of 15 teams in the top 50 or top 60, if you include Miami, they are 57. How many teams are we going to end up seeing out of the ACC? Because it's really looking to me, at least, like it's the top conference of the country, top to bottom. Sleeka, let me start with you and run through each of you here.
I'm probably going to say that 9 teams end up out of the ACC. I mean, I can't trust Pitt. I can't trust NC State. I mean, obviously we can't trust Boston College and Georgia Tech. I mean, they've still got a couple of years to go. But everyone else certainly seems to have worthy cases to be made for getting into the field.
That's a healthy number. Joe, do you think that 9 is a solid number for what we've seen so far?
Yeah, 9's a very realistic number. My number would be 10. Right now, if you made your brackets, you're looking at 10, possibly 11, depending where you put NC State.
I put NC State out.
Very strong number. I would stick by that. Pitt's the one has already been pointed as the one. I think they will find their way in. They will get their wins that they didn't get against Notre Dame. And one of the reasons why is you need cooperation. It's what I hinted at during the North Carolina-Georgia Tech analysis. You need your bottom teams to be bad. What will hurt the ACC's bid is Syracuse, who is not going to get a bid this year, if they come along and beat a Pitt, beat a Notre Dame that slips back or whatever. If Syracuse gets 7 wins, ACC will have 8 or 9. If Syracuse is sitting at 3 or 4 wins, Look for 10 teams out of the ACC.
Titel, you agree with him? 10 teams?
I feel more comfortable with 9, but I don't think 10 is a stretch. Let me set the NC State record straight right now. They've had 3 losses to top 75 teams, and they've only played 3 top 75 teams. Creighton, neutral, double-digit loss. Illinois, away, double-digit loss. Miami, away, double-digit loss. Fraud, fraud, fraud. I think that they're going to get in 9. 10 is going to be, we'll see how it goes, but 9 to 10 I think is a good over-under.
I've said it before, and I'll say it again. NC State just will not go away.
We're not going to go with there, John. You can look back to last year's podcast if you want to hear John's comments about NC State.
Right.
But David, let me bring it here. We can see over here on the right-hand side the key upcoming games for this week, starting off tomorrow night with the North Carolina at Clemson game. Looking at this list here, including Miami, Syracuse, Virginia, Pitt, Georgia Tech, Duke, then even going to the weekend with games like Clemson at Notre Dame, Louisville, Georgia Tech, Virginia Tech, Florida State. What sticks out at you as in this upcoming week in the ACC?
Really, too, Clemson hosting UNC, Clemson being better than what they've been probably since Brad Burnell took over there. Just really off to a good start this year, and this is a chance for them to pick up a showcase win at home. Now, on paper, winning at home isn't as good as winning on the road, but sometimes when it comes to electrifying your fan base, beating a highly ranked team at home can really sort of get the electricity going. I think that this could be a really big game. Now, I know Clemson has other athletic achievements that are on the front burner right now, but basketball-wise, I think that they really kind of need to win that one to energize their fan base a bit. The other one that kind of sticks out to me is this Virginia Tech at Florida State. I don't know why. I just keep being impressed by Virginia Tech. I've been watching them lose for so long that I get excited every time they win and every time they're about to take on another big team. But this game last year, we're not talking about it at all. And now it's looking like we have 2 teams that are inside the bubble, Florida State even in the protected seed range. So that one's going to be kind of fun.
Yeah, North Carolina and Clemson game, just go back to that one. And Joby, I don't know if you agree with me on this or not. I think that Clemson could be in big trouble, though, because North Carolina is coming off of that loss.
I'm not 100% sold on North Carolina this year as being the unstoppable force that some others do. I think Duke had the potential, though we've already documented their hiccups. I don't see North Carolina. I actually think Clemson, this could be the perfect, unless all the fans are already traveling to Tampa for football, this could be a breakthrough win, as David's saying. I like Clemson in this game. I think Blossom Game is going to put on a show that even Jackson and some of the great studs that North Carolina have inside with Hicks and Meeks can't keep up with.
One other thing as it relates to Duke, I mean, we've made the Gaudet comparisons, but keep in mind, Jeff Capel has actually had some considerable experience as a head coach at VCU and also Oklahoma. Some of it successful, some of it not. So no one is going to be Coach K, but not very along the way.
Let's keep moving on here. Let's go over to the big.
Chad, before you move on real quick, can I share something real quick?
Sure.
Okay, I'll need the screen share here. Okay. But this relates to Coach Krzyzewski and kind of like what John just said. Anyone that thinks that he is handing this off because it's a bad team clearly has their head up their ass, and they need help, and this man can help you. Just Dr. Kelly Vernon Dunn there in Louisville, proctologist. Just give her a call at that number. Tell her you got your head up your ass and you need help removing it.
Okay. I think I've got to reclaim the screen back from you here, David, on that note. I desperately need to reclaim it. And I would just want to point out, we do not have the BPI numbers on here. They apparently were just released today. So by next week, we definitely will have them. Just another one of these metrics that we could look at. But I want to move over to the Big Ten, which has been about as crazy of a conference start as you can possibly imagine here in this first week of conference play with upset upon upset upon upset, including Nebraska with road wins at Indiana and at Maryland.
Not an upset.
Minnesota beating Purdue. Iowa knocking off Michigan. There's probably more than that even. David, I know you want to talk about Tim Miles. So for that reason, John T., let me go over to you to talk about Nebraska.
They deserve a ton of credit, even though they're not going to get it from our esteemed colleague. Nobody thought this team was going to do anything this year because the Big Ten was so loaded. They started off 5-6 in their first 11 games in non-conference play. They got blown out by UCLA, blown out by Virginia Tech, blown out by Creighton, blown out by Kansas, bunch of double-digit losses. I was ready to pencil them in for not even a 500 record. Now they go on the road to Indiana and to Maryland and come out with a pair of close wins, but obviously a win's a win. I think it was one of the most impressive weeks of Nebraska basketball I can remember ever.
Yeah, David, I will give you a shout out here. I just pulled the resume effect up on the screen here. Coming off of a home loss by 8 points to a pathetically bad Gardner-Webb, barely beating Southern by 5, and then they do this.
Yeah, well, I mean, again, it's just people that did not vote for Tim Miles and voted for somebody else in the recent election are going to be sorry now. He's on his way to destroy the planet. In all seriousness, and I know that this is funny to say, like, this was astounding. It's not that Nebraska had played well against good teams and just – it wasn't even a Michigan State issue where there was – they were just getting blown out and they against good teams and they were sweating out bad teams. And then to have a week like that, and then suddenly you're looking at your profile, they just had it up. But outside of Gardner-Webb, you're not really – you look at it, you're not really holding your nose at any of this. You know, Dayton might even be a halfway decent win. UCLA's a 1 seed. Virginia Tech's in the rankings. Clemson is solidly in the field. So they've held serve, and then on top of holding serves, they pick up 2 massive road wins against Indiana and Maryland. And if the season ended today, I think they'd be inside the bubble.
Well, let's talk about a few other teams here. Joby, let me turn to you. Minnesota, a team that I really did not believe in, beat Purdue yesterday. Is it time for us to start believing in little Rick Pitino here?
Yeah, it is. And I thought after the loss before the Purdue game, I thought, okay, Minnesota's going to come back down to earth. You know, we had our little fun preseason, but you know, Minnesota's got a nice little resume going. They have wins against right now 2 teams solidly in the field with Purdue and Arkansas, a UT Arlington team that's probably going to be one of those fun under the radar teams all year to watch with a nice, strong RPI and other metrics for Arlington.
They're good.
And their loss, they lose, their loss in the ACC challenge isn't going to hurt. And so, this is a really solid team that, the Michigan State loss should not be considered. I think Michigan State's turned things around, and I'm sure we'll get to it. But nothing should surprise here. Minnesota is a tournament team, and if they continue on the trajectory, they could even sniff a protected seed.
Well, let's talk about a couple of these other teams here that you just mentioned. Michigan State and Sleek. Let me turn to you. Michigan State looked like they were in big-time trouble, and then they come up with the win over Minnesota, followed up by a win over Northwestern this week. Have they turned the corner here?
Well, they've turned a corner, but I don't know if they've turned the corner just yet, although, I mean, we seem to have said this a couple times in past years. Is this finally going to be the season where Sparty trips up and ends up in the NIT? I mean, this seems to be another year where they'll find a way to sneak into the field, and I think given the events of last year, they're going to look to make someone else's life miserable come March.
Well, David, I don't quite agree with Sleek there, because I think that this Michigan State team has looked really good this week, and I would not be surprised to see them contending for the Big Ten regular season title at this point.
I don't think they're quite on Nebraska's level yet, but when it comes to the other teams like Wisconsin, Indiana, I think that they're right up there with them, at least the way they've played the last couple of weeks. Michigan State, again, if you look at they got off to a rough start, but they had a really rough schedule, and in that stretch, they're noticeably better now. Like, even their wins early on, you were kind of, having to sweat out. I think it was Florida Gulf Coast and somebody else. But right now they're in a stretch where they've won 6 out of 7, and they've beaten a lot of good teams in that run. So Are they all the way turned around? I don't know. I don't see them competing for the title, but I think they're safely in on the first ballot.
Well, you got to remember, and Titel Bridges has been out. He's supposed to be back again for this Wednesday game up against Rutgers, and that should be a huge help. He was out, I think, over 16 points a game for them.
Yes, he's going to be. He was playing like one of the best freshmen in the nation before he went down. As far as their wins and losses, I can explain away Arizona, Kentucky, Baylor, Duke. I still can't explain the Northeastern loss at home, but winning at Minnesota this year in overtime is a huge win. They'll have an easy game against Rutgers on Wednesday before they really get into the heart of the Big Ten play. I think that Bridges can really help turn things around. In his absence, guys like Nick Ward have gotten a lot more opportunity and experience. And to bring him back, if they can all coalesce and get on the same page, which is tough because they have a lot of underclassmen. But I think that this could be a 20-win team, which had you asked me at Thanksgiving, I would have said, no way.
Yeah.
Joby, Michigan lost over the weekend to Iowa. Are we about to say farewell to Michigan? Is this team in trouble now?
Yeah, Iowa's a bad loss. Let's not kid ourselves. I've seen Iowa play a number of times. That's not a good team. But let's never – teams have hiccups like this, especially in conference. Michigan is still a bubble team. They are on the wrong side of the bubble right now by quite a few spots. But – given they play in the Big Ten, they're going to play Sparty twice. They have a chance to earn their way back into respectability, and they have the ability and the talent to do so. The question is, will it happen? Right now, they're out. They're on the outside looking in. They have a chance because of the conference they play in to earn their way back.
Well, let me run through each of you real quickly. Joby, let me start with you. How many teams are we looking at from the Big Ten at this point for what you've seen? I think I'd set the over-under probably right around 5. I don't know if you'd agree with me or think it's better than that.
I actually think it's higher.
Okay.
I think the Big Ten will challenge, not quite to the ACC level. I think the Big Ten's going to have 7, they could even be as high as 8 because let's get to the other conferences. You heard me say 10. You heard me say 8. That means a lot of other conferences are going to be not having as many, shall we say.
David, do you agree with him?
I don't think it's going to be as many as 8. I think it's going to be between 6 and 7.
Stalika?
I feel confident about 6 right now, but I think they'll end up playing into possibly 7.
Titel?
I think just as a numbers game, it's actually going to be closer to 5, but I think you can make legitimate cases for up to 10, which is amazing. Nebraska has the fewest number of wins in the entire conference. They're 8-6, but they're playing like the best team in the conference. This is a very hard conference to figure out for me.
Well, not everybody could understand Einstein's brilliance. I think it's the same with 10 miles.
I'm sorry, David, but they're not going to count the win against the University of Mary, no matter how many times you try to lobby the committee to do so.
Mary's is a good team.
Let's take a quick look at some of the upcoming games here. This last column here, Wisconsin and Indiana coming up on Tuesday night. We've also got Minnesota and Northwestern, Nebraska playing Iowa Thursday, Maryland, Michigan coming up. The Saturday game, Michigan State, Penn State. That is at the Palestra in Philadelphia. It's a little Big Ten Palestra day here.
Really? What is
Yep, and Wisconsin, Purdue coming up on Sunday, another big one. Titel, let me start with you. What do you look for as the best game coming up?
First, the explanation. Tom Izzo's been around 20 years. His friend said he had to coach there because they all have. He convinced Penn State to have a home game in Philly. I wish they would have given me a press pass for a separate conversation. The games I'm looking at this week, all Wisconsin all the time. They go to Indiana Tuesday. They go to Purdue on Sunday. A couple of teams who just are coming off losses and are angry. It's going to be a very tough week for Wisconsin. We're going to see if they're a protected seed or if they're going to fall a little bit.
That game is also going to be a homecoming for, I think, 3 or 4 players on the Penn State roster who are actually graduates of Roman Catholic High School in Philadelphia. So that's another good reason to get that game in the Palestra for this year.
Yeah, and then there's St. Joe's, there's Penn. There are other teams he could have played at the Palestra.
Well, he's playing Penn State there. Let's move on to let's actually go back here to the Big East next. And, Joby, let me start with you in the Big East where the Butler Bulldogs had a heck of a week, not only losing at St. John's, but then almost not even getting back from the game in a very, very scary incident.
Yeah, you got to give Butler credit for coming back and winning the next game, to be very honest. That's this is a good Butler team. This is a Butler team that has a chance at. Well, I think they're solidly in the tournament right now, and they have a chance to earn their way to a protected seed by picking off some of the top of the conference, even with the loss to the Johnnies. Let's be thankful everybody is okay. And did they have to bus all the way back from Buffalo?
Oh, no, they fixed the plane for whatever reason. They decided to take a bus instead.
No, my understanding is that they were able to get another plane would have been available the next day. They decided that they would rather be on a bus. And quite honestly, if I went through that incident, I would have been on a bus too. I would have said, "The rest of you can take the plane. I'm taking the bus."
So
that was actually in Pittsburgh, though, not Buffalo.
Yes.
But Butler. Think about what Butler's done this year. They've gone out and they've beaten a number of teams that you would say are in the tournament, so to speak. They have a really nice, pretty resume, and wins over Cincinnati. Northwestern is a good win this year. John C's Arizona win. This is a very, very pretty resume, and the Providence win coming out. Providence is an okay team, not a tournament team, but they're an okay team, NIT level, and so good for Butler. The Butler's going to be a team to watch the rest of the year.
A question about Butler, since we have them specifically, Chad has their profile up on the screen. They did get the win at Utah, but there seems to be a common theme here, and it's losing to sub-NIT teams in true road games. Is the inability to win true road games going to hurt Butler?
Well, I think I can answer that for you, David, and that is that we've still got 8 more true road games left, and I think that's what we're going to find out.
Okay.
Including,
is this a trend, I guess, is what I'm saying? Are they going to lose all 8 of them?
I don't know that 2 games necessarily makes a trend, but we'll see what happens with, for example, at DePaul, at Seton Hall, at Marquette, at Providence. They don't play the Villanova and Xavier games until the end of February, so let's. But if they do end up going, if they're sitting there at the end of January and suddenly they have 3 more road losses, I think it is cause for concern.
And if we're also talking about matchups as far as Butler, I know that Villanova and Xavier are not good matchups, but they've actually had Seton Hall's number in recent years, and Providence was another team that had Butler's number, but Butler was able to respond against them in kind this year.
Yeah, and I don't want to speak out of turn because we have John Teitel, who's the real expert here. But if Butler sweeps Villanova and Xavier, I think they're going to be in pretty good shape.
Let me go to John T, but not with that question. Instead, the game of the weekend obviously was Villanova and Creighton. Villanova coming up with a huge 10-point road win. Is that it now? Is Villanova clearly the best team in the country with that win?
Yes. When you can overcome a 10-point first-half deficit in Omaha and out-rebound an amazing top 10 undefeated team by 15 rebounds, you prove that you are the best in the nation.
And Salika, your Xavier Musketeers also came up with a nice win at Georgetown, game that they struggled with, though, a little bit here. Did we learn more about Georgetown, that maybe they are for real this season in that game?
I don't know if I would call that a nice win per se, but road wins are never going to be Picasso's in this league. Xavier was far more impressive against Providence, but let's not lose sight of the fact that Georgetown also struggled against Marquette on the road. If you want to talk about blown opportunities, Marquette had Seton Hall on the ropes in the final minute, but they just couldn't close the deal there, could not get a clutch rebound when their game was on the line.
If anybody missed the end of that game, incredible ending in that Marquette Seton Hall game. Just an amazing win by Seton Hall there, a big win by Seton Hall as well. But let's quickly ask this question around for each of you as well. So let me start with you, Stalika. How many teams are we looking at from the Big East from what you've seen so far?
I think we're going to end up with 5 right here. I'm pretty confident about 4, but I still think number 5 is going to be up for grabs.
I think it's looking like a solid 5 if you think Seton Hall is solid, along with Villanova, Xavier, Butler, and Creighton. David, do you agree with that? That we're looking at
I do. I like Seton Hall. I don't think they're as good as Villanova or Creighton or even Butler, obviously, but I think they're a lot better than what they got credit for. And I felt that way last year as well. And it's just, why is Seton Hall always under the radar? They went through a stretch last year where they won 11 of 12 in conference play and still weren't cracking the rankings. This is a good Seton Hall team.
Because I think until last year, they always melted down in February. But last year was one of the rare exceptions where they did not.
Right, but Kevin Willard, down the stretch last year, and I know they had the loss to, I think it was Gonzaga in the tournament, but, a very strong finish to the season, won the Big East tournament, and off to a great start this year. Kevin Willard's doing a great job out there.
Titel, you agree with the 5?
I feel great about 4. I'll give you the 5th, and if I have to give you the 5th, I think it's going to be the Hall, but they're not blowing me away. I think very bubblicious.
Joby?
I think 4 are going to be fighting for protected seeds, and we know those 4. David only likes Seton Hall because he not only beat Tim Miles, but Angry Frank. I mean, that alone, he called me in because he did the double. But no, Seton Hall is obviously a team we look at for 5th. Watch Marquette. They've already lost their game to Seton Hall, so that kind of hurts. But I think it'll be a fight between Marquette and Seton Hall, and God forbid that team that sucks.
Joby, let me stick with you for a second. When you see the upcoming games here, including this big one here coming up Wednesday night, Villanova at Butler, is that the best game this week? Is there something else you're looking at as well?
Well, why not Georgetown Providence? Just kidding.
Oh.
No, yeah, of course it's the best game. And like I said, this is Butler's chance. If Butler gets this win, they are, like I said, in the discussion for a protected seed. And they get they'll get 6 opportunities this year against really elite level teams, assuming Creighton doesn't pull the McDermott school of thought that David holds on to. Butler needs to take a chance advantage when they get one of these guys at home. This is about the toughest Tiger you're going to get at home, too.
I saw something on Twitter today, and if you see it on Twitter, then it's automatically true. I think this is the first time Butler has hosted a number 1 team since 1953. So huge showcase for them. Have fun, blow it out. It should be a great atmosphere.
Let's move over to the Pac-12. And Titel, let me bring in here, this being your conference with the Arizona in first place according to these standings. Obviously, we saw both UCLA and USC go down this week, though.
If you want to give good weeks, Nebraska's right up there, but Oregon has to be 1A. I mean, I cannot recall a late December, final week of December, where you face 2 undefeated teams at home and you slip by 1 with a 3 at the buzzer, and then you stomp 1 and are up like 40 in the second half. Amazing, amazing week for the Ducks.
Well, and yeah, they haven't lost now since that Georgetown game out in Maui, and looking maybe playing as well as anybody in the nation right now. David, though, should they have actually been called for a technical in the UCLA game and lost it?
In my opinion, yes. And maybe not for the reasons that you think, but I mean, I love a good court storming, but you have to wait until the game's over. And part of me wanted that point emphasized. And with or without the technical foul, Oregon is still in great shape. They're still playing well. They're probably still going to be a protected seed before it's all said and done, and maybe even better than that. But yeah, why? I guess let me flip it on you. Why shouldn't they have called it?
Well, just for those that may have missed it here, what happened was Oregon took the lead with about 0.6 seconds left on the game, and the fans stormed the court thinking the game was over. They cleared the court. They played the last 0.6, but I'm sorry, Joby, was it less than 0.6?
You're right. Right. The clock said 0. And so I'm sorry. If you're a fan, you see 0, you run out there. They cleared back Altman. If you saw the game, Altman was literally running and pushing the fans back into the stands. They obeyed quickly. If you see 0, so you're supposed to, on a court storming, you're supposed to like wait around and say, oh, was it 0.6 or not? No, that's not how court storming.
I guess my point here, though, Joby, is I think we need to get rid of the court stormings.
The 0 versus 0.6 argument just doesn't hold water with me.
But there's one other thing that we haven't brought up yet. This is the first year that the Pac-12 has also taken a page out of the SEC's playbook, where they're actually going to force Oregon's athletic department to write a check to the conference, because that is going to result in a fine, although I'm not sure it's going to make much difference to Oregon given their bottomless pit of money.
When you have Phil Knight as a booster, You can storm the court whenever you want.
And when you have Bill Walton as an announcer, it has to be called a court storming when it's against UCLA.
Conference of Champions.
This is an abomination. The worst thing that's ever happened.
Well, I don't know. I would have called it had I been the refs. I can't say that I blame them for not calling it. If you ask my opinion, I think it should have been called simply because the game wasn't over yet. But I guess what I took away from that, and I had been down on UCLA for most of the year. I was very impressed with them before that game, but I think I'm just as impressed, if not more so, with them after that game. Oregon is very good. It is not easy to go there and win. And UCLA led them the whole game, and they took a last-second shot to beat them. It does not lessen my opinion of UCLA at all. I think they were number 2 before that game, and I definitely still feel that way now.
But if we go back to the issue of court storming, I thought the first one was going to occur against Sean Miller because he was the one that was pretty outspoken about it to the Pac-12 during the offseason.
Yeah.
Let me run through each of you here. Obviously, UCLA, USC, Arizona, Oregon, all looking strong here. Let me start with you, Titel. Is this a 4-bid league, or is there a 15 that you're looking at here?
I think 4 is a pretty good number. I would also caution you that I don't think USC, despite starting the year 14-0, is a lock at all. I think that really exposed who they are. I don't know when Benny Boatwright's coming back. The other thing you should look for, if they're the 5th, keep an eye on Utah. They just added 2 big guys in size to the roster and double-digit scores. They, I think, are going to surprise a ton of people and go very far in the months ahead.
Joby, you agree with him that we're looking at that maybe we're looking at 4 with those 4 not including USC?
Yeah, and watch out for Cal too. Cal needs to prove they can do something away from home and even at home since they lost 2. But I think there are 3 that you've got to feel very comfortable about. Oregon and UCLA will fight for protected bids, with Arizona maybe a little on the outside of it, but they'll be wearing white. USC, we saw this game play out last year, and they missed it near the end. They were really. They do that again, they could, with the ACC, like I said, fighting for 9 or 10, the Big Ten having a big number, so to speak. Watch it, Pac-12. This could be where those bids get taken.
Salika, you agree?
I think there are 3 teams that are going to be stone-cold locks. I mean, I'm reasonably sure USC will get in, but I think as John T. pointed out, I'm not 100% sold on them, but also don't sleep on a team from either Utah or Colorado possibly sneaking in as number 5.
Well, and David, look at these key upcoming games. I think one of the best games coming up this week may be this Colorado-Arizona game. This may be the chance for Colorado to get themselves on the map.
Well, yeah, and they haven't played their way onto the map yet despite having opportunities, so it would take a win in a game like this. I don't think they got it in them based on what I've seen. I think Arizona's going to win that one, but one I'm kind of looking at is this Cal at USC game. USC 14-1, but as everybody else had already indicated, and I agree with this, I think that's their schedule as much as it is them. I think that they're a lot better than what we expected, but are they a slam dunk bid? And then here's Cal where, a bloated record, but most of those wins were home bye games. And they need something of substance other than just home bye games on their profile. So this is kind of a game where both teams need some meat on their profile, that Cal USC game.
Let's quickly go through a couple of the other remaining conferences here, starting with the SEC.
We're not going to talk about Lorenzo Romar.
We're not going to talk about who?
Lorenzo Romar. I was going to recommend him to Dr. Kelly Bullard Dunn.
No, we're going to pass on that. But
you've been hanging around Lee Del Vecchio's Twitter feed for too long last night.
Yeah, the HoopsHD Twitter.
Yeah, if we heading over to the SEC. Kentucky's still sitting here at 11-2. We've got Florida, who came with a nice win over Arkansas. Georgia up there also, who beat Auburn this week. Let me start with David. Let me start with you. What are you seeing out of the SEC here, and how many teams are we looking at from this conference? I don't know that we had any huge upsets this week.
I think we're seeing a 1 or 2 seed caliber Kentucky team, an easily first ballot Florida team, and then we are seeing up to 12 other teams.
Okay. Joby, are we looking at two-bid league possibly then?
Yeah. Once again, the Pac-12 can be less nervous than the SEC about those high bid numbers I was giving for the Big Ten and the ACC. I do think Arkansas is looking strong enough and would be in my field right now if I were to do it. And Georgia, you should pay attention to. But Arkansas has has a pretty nice, strong resume for that bubble team. I mean, look, your losses, Minnesota, who right now is doing quite well. Florida, who is a first ballot, as David said. They need to prove themselves. They could they could go out. The Texas win, I think, will look better over time. But you could see that schedule this week, starting tonight, at Tennessee and at Kentucky. Those are big games. Arkansas needs to go out and do it, but I think Arkansas can.
Well, he mentioned that upcoming game here. Tytel, let me go to you. Do you looking at two bids, and if so, and also look at some of these upcoming games this week, including that Arkansas-Tennessee. Is that the feature game?
I kind of like the A&M and South Carolina game because I think those teams are looking very bubblicious, and I think that game might go a long way. As much as I want to put a third bid in, like I want to like Arkansas and then they lose, and then I want to like Ole Miss and they like. It's just a lot of inconsistency. So as much as I want to give them 3 bids, I think 2 is a very good number.
Stalika?
I think South Carolina is going to be the team to watch this week because Georgia they had beaten the Gamecocks 3 times last year. That was a big reason they were out. And now they're getting Sindarius Thornwell out of the penalty box after a 6-game suspension that was handed down by the school. But my thought is 2 teams get into the regular field and 1 team goes to Dayton.
Was that what happened last year?
Yep.
Let's one last major conference to discuss. Obviously, we got to discuss the little Big 12 here. I can't say that there was any key, huge wins of note, although every game seems to be close this year. But I think we're kind of separating the field here with Baylor's, West Virginia, Kansas, and everybody else, at least from the way that I've seen them played.
Way to read the top. We have.
Yes, I read the top 3 teams.
And 5-0-1 teams. Thank you for reading the 5-1-0 teams, Chad. Great job.
I only read 3 of them, David. I do not believe in Kansas State or Iowa State yet. Do you want to sell me on one of them?
No, because I don't really believe in K-State either. I do think Iowa State will come around, but that might just be me refusing to believe that they're not a tournament caliber team because I'm so used to seeing them that way. I kind of like this Texas Tech team, but as more of a dark horse, and then after seeing them in their opener, I'm not so sure. Oklahoma State, I'm sorry, I still kind of like them.
Stalika, where are you on the Big 12?
Yeah, there's going to be 3 solid, but I do think there's going to be at least 1 team that's able to take advantage of the lower half and maybe get 1 or 2 scalps against the top of the league. So I'm looking at Oklahoma State and possibly TCU to do some damage in year 1 of the Jamie Dixon experiment.
Tytel, how many teams are you at from the Big 12, and who are and if it's beyond those big 3, the top 3, who else are you looking at?
I think the 3 locks, as you said, are pretty lockalicious. As far as the others, I can't believe in K-State yet. They're going to have an opportunity on Tuesday. And Iowa State, I want to like them. I'm not there yet. And I think a very interesting matchup is going to be Saturday when TCU travels to West Virginia with a freshman point guard. I like Jalen Fisher, but he better be ready for prime time because he's never seen anything like this.
Joby, you're nodding your head there.
Yeah, no. TCU is the big 3. 3 teams compete for protected seed, if not number 1 seeds, depending how things shake out. And then someone's got to get wins somewhere. This is the conference that was looking at 6, 7, 8 bids, before. The RPIs are not what they were a few years ago, and that's going to hurt them because you don't have your Oklahomas, and Texas has been just inexplicable right now. But TCU with Jamie Dixon knows how to get undermanned teams into the tournament. He knows how to do it. They're out of conference. Their 2 losses are nothing to be ashamed of so far. they don't have much meat on the bones out of conference. But this week, as pointed out by John T., TCU at West Virginia, but got to get past Oklahoma first. They get past Oklahoma at home, then they put a good showing. They don't have to win the West Virginia game, but they have to prove to themselves that they can compete at the high level. Then they might be able to poach somebody at home and get their way to the field. Maybe it's Dayton, but I think they have the opportunity, and I have a little faith in Fisher and Dixon to make it happen at the end of the year. And they also could wind up 9th or 10th in the conference very easily too.
In other words, it is a vintage Jamie Dixon team because they never really had much meat on their bones in the out-of-conference schedule at Pittsburgh either.
I also think you got to take a look at one other game coming up here Tuesday night, the West Virginia-Texas Tech game, the other half of that game that's got to get ready for Saturday game. It is a road game here for West Virginia. I expect them to win, but, Texas Tech is sitting here at 11-2. Let's go through take a quick look over at the American, where Cincinnati, SMU, Houston, UCF are out to fairly good starts. Temple 0-2 in the conference, though. Titel, you about to write Fran Dunphy's team off?
Sadly, yes. I mean, he's letting me down a little bit. I'm really amazed by this Cincinnati team. I thought they were going to have a very average year at best, but they seem very loaded top to bottom. A 5-point loss neutral site Rhode Island, 10-point loss at Butler. They've not beaten a bunch of great teams yet. They have a tough road ahead with Houston and SMU, but a nice spacing. Houston Saturday, SMU the following Thursday. If they can win both of those, I think I'm going to become a believer. As far as the rest of the conference, bubblicious.
Do you think a good game, Cincinnati, Houston on Saturday?
Yeah, that's one of the highlighted games here that I have. I only had two that I even noted. But David, is this a one-bid league?
No. Cincinnati is going to be inside the bubble, and I think SMU will be as well. I think they get 2 and maybe a third if another team wins the conference tournament. I don't think a team like Houston or UCF is good enough to land inside the bubble, but I do think they are capable of winning a conference tournament. It's not completely outside the realm of possibility. And another team that I've been kind of impressed with, not so much as a tournament caliber team, but just the improvement. I think Tubby Smith's doing very well at Memphis. I think they're about a year or two away, but there's reason to be hopeful again, and hopefully fans start coming to the games again.
Joby, you agree?
I agree with that analysis on Memphis, 100%. Obviously, it's an upgrade from Pastner. And David put this in put UCF as an at-large in one of his brackets. At the time, I was skeptical, but UCF, they need to beat the top, at least get a win against the top 2-1. But they might be relying, if UMass starts pairing through the A-10, and if Temple starts to show what they did for that 1 week, for the remainder of the year, and make those wins become good wins, for lack of a better word, UCF has the chance to play their way inside the bubble. They need other people to help them out, but they can do it. And I've actually been impressed of what UCF has been able to do this year.
Well, yeah, and with Taco Fall in the center there, he's a tough matchup for almost anybody. Stalika, where are you on the American? Are you at more than 2 or just 2?
I think I'm going to go with 3 because I do think there's going to be a wild card that gets the auto bid out of the American. I mean, we know about Cincinnati. I think SMU is another team that at least has a shot to get at large, but I think my dark horse here is going to be Houston. I mean, they're going to have a big chance this weekend against Cincinnati at home to possibly get a signature win, but I think we're going to be seeing Kelvin Sampson back in the NCAA tournament this year.
All right, let's take a quick look at the Atlantic 10 next, where this might be a one-bid league. And, I think at the end of the day, we're probably going to end up with 2, with probably VCU and Dayton being the teams. Kind of disappointed in Rhode Island so far. David?
Yeah, I'm disappointed in all 14 teams. I really like this league. It's a basketball-centric league. I always thought you and I – and I think really the whole panel really feels that this is an underappreciated, underexposed league in general, but it's hard to make that argument this year. And you almost just wonder what happened. And, this is a league where there's typically 3 or 4 teams that get big wins out of conference, or they get a lot of road wins, or maybe they don't get great wins, but they get a lot of decent wins. And it just didn't happen this year. And the top of the league is right on the bubble, and everybody else is kind of outside of it. And Rhode Island's been a disappointment. They did finally win a road game. They went to St. Louis and won big, but they had their chances and didn't get it. Dayton had their chances and didn't get it, and same with VCU. And same with really St. Bonaventure. They had a couple of chances at decent wins and didn't get them.
Okay, well, David, the five of us could go to St. Louis and win a game. So,
yes.
But Titel, are we looking at a one-bid league possibly here now?
Possibly. I still think VCU is in the mix. I think Dayton looks very good as their losses have all been pretty impressive to good teams. VCU losing by single digits to Baylor, I almost consider that a win on a neutral court. Getting destroyed by Illinois neutral site, I don't like. And Georgia Tech, 3 points in overtime at home is painful. But I think there's 9 more wins out there to get to 20 wins. But they're going to have to – they can't just show up like in years past and throw a little havoc. They're going to have to earn it this year.
Joby?
2 bids. Everybody's wearing dark jerseys. One of those 2 will be in Dayton. It'll be combined of VCU, Dayton, and Rhode Island. The only way they're getting 3 is if somebody upsets in the tournament, which could easily happen. I mean, the way they get 3 is if the Bonnies plow through the tournament or something, or et cetera, or St. Joe's.
Yeah, I also, I got to keep an eye on Davidson just because of guys like Jack Gibbs on that team. But I don't think they're at large at all, but they're a type of team that could plow through and win a conference tournament as well.
So they're good Davidson right now?
They're good Davidson, yes. But Stalika, over the West Coast Conference, obviously the Zags, one of 3 remaining undefeated teams, along with Nova and Baylor in the country. Are they ever going to lose?
Well, they may lose 1 game to St. Mary's, but I don't think they're going to have any problems with anyone else in this conference. I mean, I'd also mentioned a couple times, San Francisco had a shot to be a dark horse, but I don't think you want to be losing to Santa Clara, though, if you're going to be contending with BYU for 3rd place here.
I guess I think the only question, I think we would all agree that Gonzaga and St. Mary's are tournament teams from what we've seen so far. But the question, and David, let me start with you. Is there a chance that BYU could actually get into bubble consideration, sitting here with a 57 Ken Palm rating?
Well, their chance is Gonzaga and St. Mary's. They've got to win at least 1, probably more than 1 against both of those teams. If they do that and they hold serve the rest of the way, yeah, I think they're in the discussion simply because, like, if you hold serve, avoid bad losses, and get 1 or 2 good wins, you're normally at least on the bubble.
Okay. And let's go last but not least over to the Mountain West. And Joby, is there anything worth discussing here?
Oh, God, Nevada's been worse than expected. Boise's been worse than expected. And San Diego State has gone to the witness protection program.
After San Diego State won the Diamond Head, they turned around and lose at home. So, hey, New Mexico.
And the Diamond Head wasn't much of an accomplishment. This is a bad league that should probably be moved to Thursday nights.
No one in this league is going to be inside the bubble. Like, we talked about Nevada and Wyoming maybe being able to do it if they ran away from the conference, but they lost their conference open, or they lost both of them lost games over the weekend to sub-NIT teams. This is a 1-bid league, and the bid is outside the bubble, probably on the 12-13 line at best. They're going back under the radar.
Okay. Well, on that note, I know that we all want to get to watch the end of the Rose Bowl, which is now just been tied up here with a minute left to go in the game. So let me run through final thoughts from each of you. And Joby, let me start with you.
Well, we're going to see how much coaching has an impact on game-to-game play with the Duke Krzyzewski deal. As pointed out, Capel's done this before. If Capel does a good job, does he become the heir apparent to Kay when Kay steps down in the next few years? I think this is a great test run. Capel's been given a Ferrari that's had engine troubles. We'll see if he's a good mechanic.
Stalika.
Yeah, I know we had mentioned this earlier. I mean, we've joked about, I guess, some life and death instances as it comes to, games you win, games you lose, like Butler losing to St. John's. But again, it was a pretty scary situation if you, I guess, read in detail about how they would lose, I guess, during some of the cabin pressure after they were flying from New York to Indianapolis. But I'm glad they were able to land safely in Pittsburgh and be able to make that trip back home, because I think, as Chad alluded to in our email thread, this is one program that's really gone through more than its share of tragedy over the past 5 to 10 years.
John T.
On a lighter note, Boston College last year, 0-18 in ACC play. If you could, usually you make a New Year's resolution on January 1st, and you got to wait later in the year for it to come true. They wait a couple hours. The resolution is win an ACC game, and they go get Syracuse to come into the Conti Forum, and they beat them 96-81. They make 16 of 26 from behind the arc, and against the most incredible zone defense in the history of man, they have an assist advantage of 28-12. Go BC.
Okay, David.
Getting back to what Joey was talking about, we're going to see what kind of a coach Jeff Capel can be and how much it really matters. And can he kind of become the front runner at Duke, or could he earn another type of promotion? And could he possibly, I mean, if he does really, really well and wins the ACC and takes them deep into the tournament, get a spot on Tim Miles' staff at Nebraska?
On that note, actually, my final thought, first of all, John T. pointed out BC. St. John's has now won 3 straight games, won at Syracuse by an absolute dominating margin, won that home game against Butler that we mentioned, then won at DePaul, which, is a road win, I guess. But right now, as we sit here, there are 3 teams tied at 2-0 in first place of the Big East. Villanova, Xavier, and the Johnnies.
One of these things is not like the other.
On that note, on behalf of down below me there, I guess we have David and John T are down below me, Stalika and Joby off to the 2 sides here. I want to thank everybody for joining us, and we'll talk to you again real soon.